Paris is the next step after the failed talks in Copenhagen in 2009, and are urgently needed in the context not just of climate change, but the fact that the Kyoto Protocol time period has now, or is due to expire. A comprehensive agreement in Paris is likely in some senses and not others. So it's tracking well in terms of the possibility of an agreement that brings in a range of states, in part because it's more bottom-up in terms of the structure of the treaty. So it's actually asked states to make their own commitments in terms of greenhouse gas emissions commitments. And that's a distinction from Copenhagen, which was more top-down in the way it envisaged that structure working. The hope generally is that you can have an agreement that can be ratcheted up over time, so you get everyone in the tent, and then over a period of time you start to get states to commit to greater and greater levels of greenhouse gas emissions reduction over time, and greater levels of financial commitment to assist less developed countries to change the way in which they develop. Australia is currently committed to a 5% greenhouse gas emissions reduction by 2020, and it's really difficult to assess whether it's on track to meet that. Some analysts say no, that it's unlikely under direct action. The government's very clear that they think it is on track to meet that 5% target. The government's position will largely be to try to say these are the circumstances that prevent Australia taking any stronger measures, that other countries need to be aware of Australia's particular circumstances, that make it unfair for it to take the same sorts of actions as other states. I think that will be the position Australia takes. And the real question is whether other countries will enable Australia to kind of get away with that position. I think what you might see is that other countries will put more and more pressure on Australia, and in turn I think that will also ratchet up some degree of domestic pressure within Australia. "5% as a target is nowhere near representative of the level of responsibility that Australia has as a country with a very high per capita emissions rate, and as a country that has relative capacity to actually offset some of the immediate costs of transitioning from a fossil fuel economy to a low or no fossil fuel economy over time. In that context, 5% doesn't look very significant, and it will certainly pale in comparison to the other sets of commitments that have been made and are being made by comparable states. So Australia needs to move to help developing countries in the context of their response to climate change. It needs to move away from investment in fossil fuels and the fossil fuel economy, and it needs to urgently begin to move towards carbon pricing as a mechanism for driving down its own emissions.